Hello, Victober. Hello, friends. Welcome to LizziefayeLovesBooks. I'm Elizabeth, and it is time to do my October wrap-up. Today is Saturday, October the 5th, and I feel like it's been a long time since I filmed a video, but it's really been only about a week. But a lot has happened in that week because I have had COVID and I'm still getting over it. You could probably hear it in my voice. And so, because I'm not up to 100% yet, and I read a lot of books, in fact, I wouldn't have finished as many as I did if I hadn't had to sequester myself and just sit around and be sick. Than I did. So anyway, I'm going to divide this wrap up into 3 different parts because I read 14 books for the More Montgomery challenge. And so I'm going to do that video separately. And then I also surprisingly read or listened to 12 middle grade books. And I'm pretty sure that I read enough things to cover all the prompts for the Halloween Readathon, which was hosted by Storm from Storm Reads. And so I'm going to do those in a separate video as well. So let me just give you a summary of everything, and then I'll chat about everything else that's not included in the Montgomery books or the middle grade books. So I finished a total of 41 books. I was going for 42 right there at the end, and I tried starting an audiobook that I knew I didn't have enough time to finish, but I was too sleepy. It was almost midnight, and I thought, there's just no point. It would have fulfilled one more prompt in the Journey Through the Bible Readathon, which was hosted by Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails. But I did accomplish, I think, 4 different prompts for that readathon, maybe just 3. And I'm going to have to just be happy with that. There were a lot of prompts, and I knew that I couldn't do them all, but I wanted to at least do one from each category. But anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. But let me do a summary. So of the 41 books, 17 of them were in print, and 24 of them were on audio. And I already mentioned that there were 14 by or about or related to Lucy Maud Montgomery. Now, I said there were 12 middle grade books. Actually, 2 of those were fantasy. One is definitely a YA fantasy, and the other could really be middle grade or YA. So if you take out the 2 fantasy, that just leaves 10 actual middle grade books. And so I'll probably go ahead and include the 2 fantasy books in this video just because they're really more YA than middle grade. And then I finished a total of 6 nonfiction books, and then 4 women's fiction or romance books. 2 of those were Christian, which I also counted for the Journey Through the Bible Readathon, which was like I said, a Christian fiction readathon. I read some Christian nonfiction, but I'm pretty sure that the readathon was just for fiction, so I can't count the nonfiction for the readathon. Anyway, I also read 3 mysteries. One of those was also a Christian mystery, which I can count towards the Journey Through the Bible Readathon. And then I read 2 books plus 1 nod to Victober. This was the first year that I have actually participated in Victober by reading actual Victorian literature. I only read 2. I didn't do the prompts, but I'm excited that I actually read and enjoyed what I read. So in the past couple of years leading up to this, I have listened to some Victorian themed cozy mysteries during the month of October as just kind of a nod to Victober, but that doesn't really count because they weren't written during the Victorian era. So this year, what I read is Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. This was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy it. It is something I would read again. I listened to it on audio, and please pardon this interruption, but I was editing the video. It's already dark, and I realized that part of my footage was missing. My camera app has been acting up, and I'm hoping that I can at least film a short segment here to fill in the gap and then be able to put this video together. So all I was saying about Cranford is that if I ever read it again, I think I would like to read it in print. That way I can just make sure that I absorb everything and follow the storyline and just savor it a little bit more than I can do when I'm listening on audio. And then the other book from the Victorian era that I read is Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. I didn't really have any plans to read this book until recently when some reseller friends sent me this really old copy of the book. And when I opened it and saw what it was, I thought, somebody is trying to tell me that I am supposed to read this book, because I already have a newer edition in my eBay store, as well as a graphic novel copy. And I thought, here it is, Victober, and I'm going to read this book. I did listen to it on audio, but I very much enjoyed it. Fiona from Reads and Eats, who is from Scotland, was telling me that it is a Scottish classic, and it also just so happens, coincidentally, that I was reading a nonfiction book about Scotland this month as well for my book club. So it just went hand in hand with what I was already reading this month. I did really enjoy this, and I think I am now interested in reading other books by Robert Louis Stevenson as well. And then my little nod to Victober for the past few years has been to read one or more of the Victorian mysteries by Emily Brightwell. These are the Mrs. Jeffreys mysteries. Mrs. Jeffreys is a housekeeper who helps solve mysteries for her boss, who is a Scotland Yard inspector, and she enlists the help of the other staff, and they very much enjoy helping solve his mysteries, even though he has no idea. And it's just a really fun series, but they're not written in the Victorian era, so technically don't count for Victober, but they are set in the Victorian era, and so it just seemed like an appropriate time to go ahead and listen to one more of these. Now, this poor mangled copy came to me from one of our county libraries, and I'm amazed it hasn't been discarded, but I'm glad that it wasn't, because I don't know if there's another copy of this particular book in the county. This is book 7 in the series, Mrs. Jeffreys Plays the Cook. Definitely I will continue the series, even though it is a very long series and will probably take me quite a while to finish. So I'll let that segue me into mysteries, and I'll tell you about another cozy mystery that I read, this one in print. This is book 4 in the Tea Shop Mysteries by Laura Childs. This is The English Breakfast Murder, and this series is just continuing to grow on me. I think I enjoyed this one and book 3 even more than the first 2. So I will definitely continue with the series. I'm counting this one for my e-book for the Killing Time with Cozy's ABC Cozy Mystery Challenge that has been going on all year. And I'm glad that I finally got it read. So my voice is just about gone. Thankfully, the rest of the video is already filmed, and so I'm going to go back to that now. I've got one more mystery to tell you about, but first let me talk a minute about the Journey Through the Bible Christian Fiction Readathon that was hosted by Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails. I got a late start on this, and I had hoped that I would have been able to squeeze in a few more books. As it turns out, I think I only have 3 books that I can count towards the readathon, but I want to show you a picture of her challenge board. This was a choose-your-own-adventure type readathon, and there were, I think, 4 different categories. I'm going from memory, although you can see it here. I'm going from memory. But I wanted to at least try to do one from each of the categories. And I didn't quite make it, but I did read 3 books, and I think all 3 of those books would count for more than one prompt. So let me just tell you the books that I read, and I'll try to remember as best I can what prompts they worked for. I'm not going to be able to tell you a whole lot about each of the books simply because I'm already getting a little bit worn out just standing here, and I'm going to make a mess of this video if I try to do too much. But the book that I read for one of the prompts is book 2 in the Herringford and Watts Christian Cozy Mystery series by Rachel McMillan, called Lesson in Love and Murder. It's book 2, and I enjoyed it very much. It is about 2 female detectives who are patterning themselves after Sherlock Holmes and Watson. It's set in historic Toronto, and it was very enjoyable. Then I also read 2 Christian romances, if you will, really just good family drama, community drama. And it was the last 2 books in a 4-book series. I listened to the first 2 last month, really enjoyed them, loved them, and I was very eager to read the last 2. And it is the Gresham Chronicles by Lawana Blackwell. Book 3 is The Dowry of Miss Lydia Clark. And then book 4 is The Jewel of Gresham Green. And I have loved this series. I thought it was fantastic. There are several storylines in each of the books, and yet some of the same main characters have their stories continued throughout all 4 books, and I just think it's fantastic. It is set in the late 1800s. This one is set in 1872 in England, and I believe that book 4 is not long after 1884. Book 4 says 1884 England, and I just thought they were fantastic. So if you ever have a chance to read any of these books, then I would highly recommend them. I would go in order because the stories and the main characters' stories definitely do have a big progression throughout, and you definitely want to go in order. The first book is The Widow of Larkspur Inn, and the second book is The Courtship of the Vicar's Daughter, and I just thought they were great. Okay, so let me tell you what each of those counted for the Journey Through the Bible Readathon. So the top tier was Where Are You Going? And there were several different prompts that had to do with going different places in the Bible. And one of the prompts said to read a book with nature on the cover. So I am counting this one for that. And also there was a prompt to read a book with a house on the cover. So this would also count for that. The next line was, Who are you going to meet? And I thought I was going to be able to do the Joseph prompt and read a book with many colors on it. And the one that I had hoped to read was a book with a quilt on it, and I did not get to it. However, this really to me seems colorful enough. It's really only a couple of main colors, but still, it's beautiful, and I feel like it would still work. And really this one too. They're beautiful books, but I didn't get to read the one that I really wanted to. And the next one was Witness an Event. So I am counting the Herringford and Watts book for reading a book with a pear on the cover. Now you're thinking, this only has words, but there are pairs of words. There are pairs of S's, and there are pairs of L's, and there is a pair of characters. The Herringford and Watts series is about a pair of detectives. So it may not be the original intent of the prompt, but I'm going with it. And then also there was a prompt in that line that was to read a book that was over 400 pages. And the Jewel of Gresham Green is just over 400 pages. It is 407. So I can count that as well. So thank you, Katie, for hosting a really fun readathon. I hope to be able to do more prompts in the future if you ever do anything like this again. And I want to encourage all of you to go and check out her channel. And she always has something really fun going on over there, some great challenges, and I want you to go and check out her videos. So then I have 2 books left that are fiction to talk about, and they are romances. And this is a series that is not on my series about series list because I only started it this year, but now I have finished it. I read the last 2 books in the Heart of Texas series by Debbie Macomber. I had started Promise Texas in a previous month, and I got maybe about half done. And so I finished it and then went right on and read Return to Promise. This one was good because it was really more about one of the couples who had gotten together and gotten married in a previous book, but this time their marriage is in trouble, and it is the story of how they worked through it. All right, the last group I want to talk about in this video are the nonfiction books that I read. I read 6. One of the books I read is the book of Ezra from the Bible. I read this because Oshina from Oshina Gotta Read 'Em All has been issuing challenges over the last few months to read various books of the Bible and to read along with her. And one of the books that she was reading in the month of October is the book of Ezra. She was also reading the book of Psalms, but I just decided to read the book of Ezra since I already had so many other books that I was reading. And so I very much enjoyed it. It's just a 10-chapter book. It's from the Old Testament, and it is where the Israelites have been in exile, and one of the kings gives them permission to go back and start rebuilding Jerusalem. So I'm glad that I read it. And I'm not sure what book of the Bible I will read next. I am so behind on watching YouTube. I haven't looked to see if Oshina has issued any challenges or Bible reading challenges for this month or not, but I hope to do that very soon. And then another Christian book that I read is something that I picked up in a library sale, and because I'm involved in music at our church, I thought I might be able to glean something from this. This is really written towards music leaders, and while I do some leading of music in our church, I am not the leader. So there's really not much here that I can act on, but I still thought it was a very interesting book. It's called Attracting Quality Musicians. It's by Tony Guerrero, and I'm glad that I read it. It was not long, and I can always learn more in this area, and so I'm glad that I found it. And perhaps, in the future, I will be able to put to use some of the knowledge and ideas that I was able to glean from this book. And then as part of my Bible study, I had these 2 books also found at a library sale from the Women of Faith Bible Study collection. One is Growing in Prayer, and one is Knowing God's Will. These are both meant to be group Bible studies, but I just read them and looked up the scriptures on my own and read the discussion questions and tried to answer them in my head, and I enjoyed them. It was a good aspect of my Bible study. And then 2 other nonfiction books that I read. One is for book club, because we do usually pick a nonfiction book for Nonfiction November, but I decided that if I wanted to make sure I got it finished in time, I needed to go ahead and read this in the month of October. This is Clanlands by Sam Heughan and Graham McTavish, and I want to thank Fiona from Reads and Eats for teaching me how to say Heughan. I hope I'm saying it right. This was a fun trip through Scotland with these 2 gentlemen who are stars of Outlander. I've never read Outlander. I've never watched the show. So I really have not seen these guys other than the fact that Graham McTavish was also one of the stars of The Hobbit. But they had a fun sense of humor and a fun banter. They visited several locations throughout Scotland and talked about the history of those locations, and they did it in a really fun way. So I am glad that I read it. I was not sure if I was going to be able to follow it or understand what was going on, but I did very much enjoy it. And now I might have to give Outlander a try. I don't know. We shall see. And then the last one I want to talk about is one that my brother recommended to me when he was here in February. He had just read this book, and he had been making some small atomic habit changes in his life. And so I put this on hold on Hoopla, and it has taken me this long to get it because it is very popular and a lot of people were lined up in front of me. But this is Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it basically just recommends starting small and making small but important and impactful changes in your life, in whatever thing you want to change or do, and do it consistently. And over time, you will make some big changes. So it was very good. I actually listened to it twice, and now my husband is reading it. So that is all I want to share with you in this video. I will be back soon to tell you about what I read for the More Montgomery challenge in a separate video, and also what I read that are middle grade books that count toward the Halloween Readathon that was hosted by Storm from Storm Reads. Meanwhile, I hope that you have been enjoying what you've been reading, and I hope that you will stay tuned for more videos. Have a great day, read a good book, and God bless you.